Thank you so much for that incredible welcome. I only hope you like me as much when I finish as when I started. And what an honor it is to be here with Rabbi Mandel and Rabbi Zeitz, with Brigitte Garceau, our wonderful provincial rabbi, Jewish person in the world today. And I think I've gone from being an MP who happened to be Jewish to being a Jewish MP. And it's a very difficult transition. One of the things that we realized, I think, since October the 7th, is that when one Jew in the world is hurt, all of us are hurt. I think we've all felt a double trauma since October the 7th. The first being seeing Israel suffer through the worst pogrom that it's ever suffered through, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. I traveled to Israel as part of a non-partisan delegation, me and Marco Mendicino, and Melissa Lantzman, and Marty Morantz, and Michelle Rempel, in November. And we went to Sderot, we went to the kibbutzim in the south. We saw the devastation. You saw blood splattered through homes. You saw homes ransacked. You smelled the acrid smell of smoke where people burned to death in their safe rooms. We were at a kibbutz called Kfar Asa, where the mayor of the kibbutz was running for re-election. We saw his campaign posters all around the kibbutz because there was supposed to be a municipal election right after October the 7th. But the mayor was no more. He had died, killed by terrorists right under one of his campaign posters. And the pain and the suffering, when we spoke to survivors who had been in their safe room, and as we all know, these safe rooms were built to protect people from missiles, not from terrorists who were coming to their doors, so they had no locks on the safe rooms. And people who had fought with the terrorists at the safe room door, sometimes miraculously the terrorists went away, and other times their family members were killed right in front of them. We heard from parents who were in WhatsApp chat groups who saw their children disappear from the WhatsApp chat group during the course of the day, not knowing whether they were killed, injured, kidnapped, or whether their phone had just died. We met with people who had waited in the safe room for over 24 hours before any help came, not understanding why the army wasn't coming to help them from bases only a couple hours away. The greatest intelligence failure in Israeli history, the greatest response failure in Israeli history. And of course, there's going to need to be accountability when the war is over. But it was a tragedy to see what happened. We met with the Canadians. People talked about Addie Kaplan, her mother Jackie Rivers. Kaplan is from Ottawa. I've met with her many, many times. We're trying to help her grandchildren get Canadian citizenship. We met with all of the families of the Canadians who had perished, 8 of them, in this tragedy. Whether at the music festival like Alexandra Luke, or in kibbutzim. And we did a memorial service for the Canadians that died. It's important to remember that this attack was not only against Jews and only against Israelis. People of many nationalities were murdered, were taken hostage. I've met many times with families of the hostages. I've been in Washington, D.C., most recently at AIPAC, where I met with the Goldbergs and the Poland family, whose son Hirsch has been a hostage. There are still Americans who are hostage in Gaza. And every time I talk to them, and Rachel Goldberg is a heroine beyond heroine, you hear about the fact they can't sleep, they can't eat, they can't live normal lives. So you imagine how horrible it is for the hostage that God knows is what's happening to them under tunnels in Gaza. But the families, the friends above ground, in Israel, in America, in Canada, are suffering every single day. So it's been 6 months now, and we need to bring them home. And what is the saddest thing for me is that when I came back from Israel in November, I was able to get a motion through the House, unanimously, calling for the immediate an unconditional return of the hostages. I don't even know if that motion would pass the House of Commons today. And that is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that people don't understand the existential threat that Israel faces. I came back trying to tell everyone, my fellow MPs in my party and in other parties, why Israelis were doing what they're doing. And it doesn't mean that we need to agree with every way that Israel's prosecuting the war. It doesn't mean we have to agree with who the Prime Minister of Israel is. But you have to understand how Israelis on the center and the right and the left all feel. That if Hamas, a terrorist organization whose charter calls for the destruction of Israel and for the destruction of Jews around the whole world, if Hamas stays in power in Gaza, if Hamas is allowed to survive in Gaza, then there'll be another pogrom tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Israel is doing what any sane country in the circumstances would be doing, which is getting rid of a terrorist threat that we in Canada recognize as a terrorist threat right over their border. So I've been trying to explain that, and I've been trying to explain that we are proud Canadian Jews. We are proud of our country. We helped build this country. More than any other group, disproportionately, we've built this country. We've been here since 1760, and in all fields, whether academia, law, medicine, physics, science, arts, sports, we have built this country disproportionately to our 1.3% of the population. And we've been given enormous opportunities in Canada and the United States that our ancestors never would have dreamed of. Opportunities that we never would have had in any other country in the world. But we've given back. But we're also, in addition to being proud Canadians, proud Jews, part of a people that's lasted for thousands of years, united by more than just a religion, but by common ancestors, common values, tikkun olam. We are also proud Zionists. It should not be a dirty word, the word Zionist. And when people yell hateful slogans outside of synagogues and Jewish schools in this country, it is unfathomable to me. And I wanted to educate the House of Commons about what being a Zionist was. A Zionist simply means that we have a right to have one Jewish homeland in our indigenous land of Israel. It means nothing more. It's something that all Jews in the world are connected by. Not only because our ancestors used to live there millennia ago, but because we know what happens when there is not an Israel. We've been expelled from almost every country in the world, from England in 1290, from Spain in 1492, from Portugal in 1499, from Arab lands in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. We were ghettoized in most of Europe. We were murdered in crusades, murdered in pogroms, murdered in the Holocaust. And we all know what happened when Jews in the 1930s wanted to leave Europe, wanted to save themselves from the Nazis, and they had no place to go because nobody opened their doors. And that's why we all know that as Jews we're safer because there's an Israel. Because there's one country in the whole entire world that we're allowed to go to if things get bad where we are. We see what's happening now in South Africa. A government that's brought Israel to the International Court of Justice, where their ministers are openly preaching terrible things about Jews, where a Jew was removed as the head of the cricket team. And we know that this can happen elsewhere. So, to me, there is absolutely nothing irreconcilable with being a proud and loyal Canadian, being a proud Jew, and being a proud Zionist. And as I talked to my colleagues, and I saw what happened when a motion was adopted that the NDP put forward and then we amended, made it better, but it was still bad, I really started to think about what my place was in the party that I had grown up in. And it took a couple of weeks a lot of agonizing conversations to recognizing two things. Number one, I and all of you can't let this horrible period of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment change my core values. We all believe in Tikkun Olam. We all believe the world is bigger than just ourselves or just Jews. And if I believe in a clean environment, if I believe that seniors have a right to dental care, if I believe in other things, I can't change those core values just because I'm hurt and angry right now. I have to fight back. I have to say that they have to make room for me and my views wherever I am. And I also know that we need to fight anti-Semitism now. This is not something that can wait 18 months from now until a new election. We need to fight anti-Semitism now. And I was fortunate that the Prime Minister has now asked me to be the political leader of the government on anti-Semitism. So let me tell you what we're going to do on anti-Semitism now. Number one, I'm going to work with Deborah Lyons, our special representative on anti-Semitism, to make sure that we do something about demonstrations that are blocking buildings, blocking synagogues, blocking Jewish schools, blocking community centers. Yes, this falls within municipal policing, but there's no reason we can't look at criminal code amendments to make it illegal to demonstrate within X number of meters of a Jewish or other religion institution. We can also, while we're trying to do that, convince municipalities to be leaders and pass bylaws like Vaughan is doing, like Hampstead is doing, like St. Luke is doing, and like many others, like Dollard has been a leader with the IRA definition. Dollard was one of the first municipalities to pass the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. So we can do that, we need to do that. We need to make sure as well that we educate people as to how and why we find slogans hateful. Hate speech is not the barrier, right? The idea that it's all fine, every speech is fine if you don't cross the criminal line of hate speech, that's ridiculous. Hate speech requires you to say, I want to kill all Jews, I want to harm all Jews, and you should do that too. It's not okay to do things that fall just below that level that you know make Jews feel hated. If you want to call for a ceasefire, call for a ceasefire. Don't scream, revolution, revolution, intifada, intifada. Don't scream from the river to the sea when you know it makes your Jewish counterparts feel that you want to destroy them and their ancestral homeland. And I need to be able to work with all of you to educate Canadians as to why these things are wrong. We need to make sure that there's Holocaust education, but not only Holocaust education, but education on modern anti-Semitism in all schools in this country, in all public schools and private schools, every province. In December, we all saw the hearings that happened in the United States Congress, where the presidents of Penn, Harvard, and MIT were all unable to articulate that calling for the genocide of Jews was a violation of their code of conduct, irrespective of context. What I and my colleagues Anna Ganey, Ben Carr, Marco Mendicino, and David Lametti did is we sent a letter to the 29 biggest Canadian universities, including Concordia, McGill, University of Montreal, and we asked them a series of questions. And the first question was, is the call for genocide against Jews, is the call for genocide against Israel a violation of your code of conduct? I'm pleased to say that all 29 answered us and all 29 said yes. And we've published their letters on our website. And now Hillel's and other student groups, including the new Federation of Jewish Students that I'm helping start across Canada, can enforce what they promised in those letters. I've also proposed a motion at the Justice Committee, where we're going to hold hearings here in Canada at the Justice Committee on anti-Semitism, focusing on college campuses. And we will bring the presidents of universities, we will bring Jewish students, and we will hear exactly what's happening on campus, like I've heard as I've spoken to Jewish students across the country. And then what can we do? We don't have jurisdiction on universities, that's up to the university administration, it's up to the provinces. But what I will be suggesting is, number one, there be a safe space for demonstrations on campus, meaning that each university should delegate one spot
where demonstrations are permitted on campus that is nowhere near the buildings that students need to access to go to classes. Nowhere near dormitories. And nobody needs to walk through demonstrations that are preaching hate against them. That respects the right to demonstrate, but stops our kids from having to experience it on a daily basis. I will be asking the universities to all adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. The world definition, the definition that Canada helped develop, that's been adopted by the government of Canada, most provinces, and many municipalities, including Dollar. And we will put out a guide to explain to universities how to implement IRA. That, to me, is a government of Canada responsibility. We can explain to people what to do, what the IRA definition means, and what is anti-Semitism. Or that in all of the diversity plans in universities, that Jews are included as one of the groups that is part of diversity and inclusion. So that Jews aren't left out. This is not about everybody but Jews. We're also a minority that needs to be respected. And most importantly, what I want to be able to do is go across the country and talk to Jewish community organizations and let them know that we are not alone. That most Canadians support us. They may not know what to do. They may not know what to say. But it is a small, angry group of people that is doing these demonstrations, that are trying to scare us and intimidate us in our own country. And we should not allow that. We are stronger. We are smarter. We will fight back. And so, one last thing that I wanted to mention to all of you, because it's something that you need to tell everybody who's not Jewish. Anti-Semitism is not about Jews. You use the old words, canary in the coal mine, but it's a lot more than that. Anti-Semitism is a threat to our democracy. If you do not believe that the election system is fair, that you need to follow the Constitution because Jews control the world, and so, that's the biggest trope, right? Jews control the world, Jews control the media, Jews control politics. Well, if that's the case, why do people bother to vote? What's the difference if Jews are just going to control everything anyways? Why do people care if the election is fair and free? Why do people care about following the Constitution if everything is self-ordained and Jews are just in control no matter what? We see in our neighbors to the south where 40% of the population doesn't believe the results of the last election were actually fair. And that can happen anywhere. And we also need to let them know that national security is threatened by anti-Semitism. Most anti-Semitism starts on social media. It starts on TikTok, it starts on YouTube, it starts on X, on Meta, which is Instagram and Facebook. 75% of hate that arrives in the streets starts online. And when you look at stuff that's online and you see these hateful things, they're often not from your neighbor down the street, or even the person in the next province, or in the United States. A lot of the anti-Semitic messages here, in fact, a plurality of the anti-Semitic messages are coming from bots from Russia and from Iran and from other enemies trying to create domestic anti-Semitism in Canada and the United States, which they know threatens the fabric of our society. We need to let people know that by allowing anti-Semitism here, we're rewarding Iran and its proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, that are seeking to foment terrorism in the world. And so, I believe there's a strong, coherent message we can give to get most Canadians to understand this, to get most Canadians to care, to make us feel not alone, and to let everybody know that we will never leave this country because we make it a better place. Am Yisrael Chai.